A French economist spent years in the tax records and found something uncomfortable. Money made from owning grows faster than money made from working. Economists used to tell a comforting story. Leave the market alone and the rewards spread out. Thomas Piketty proved the opposite, and he did it with data, not opinion. This is Capital in the 21st Century, 700 pages that explain why hard work stopped feeling like enough. The whole book comes down to one line. R is greater than G. R is the return on wealth you already own, things like property, shares, and a business. G is how fast the economy and your wages grow. When R beats G, the people who own things pull ahead of the people who work, automatically, year after year, without anyone having to be greedy. So how big is the gap? Over the long run, the return on capital has run at about 4 to 5% a year. Growth and wages, closer to 1 to 2. It sounds small. Stretched across a lifetime, it is enormous. Watch what that gap does across 5 centuries. The dark line is the return on owning. The red line is the growth of the economy and wages. Owning wins almost the entire way. Here is why that compounds into something huge. A fortune growing at 5% doubles in about 14 years, while wages barely move. Inherited money beats earned money. The past eats the present, and it does it quietly, in the background, while everyone argues about pay. And Piketty backs this with real data, not theory. 2 centuries of tax and estate records across France, Britain, and America. The pattern he finds is a giant U. Inequality was brutal in the Victorian era, collapsed in the middle of the 20th century, then started climbing again from the 1980s, back toward where it began. Here is the uncomfortable part. That happy middle stretch, the one your parents and grandparents took for granted, was the exception, not the rule. It took 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and decades of high taxes to close the gap. Nothing gentler has ever managed it. The book is not beyond criticism, and a fair review has to say so. The Financial Times went through his spreadsheets and picked holes in some of the wealth figures, especially for Britain. Piketty answered at length, and most economists felt the broad story survived, but the fine detail took a real knock. There is a second, sharper objection. The economist Matthew wrongly showed that a lot of Piketty's rising return on capital is really just rising house prices. That matters because a story about housing has very different fixes from a story about capital in general. Piketty's own answer is a global tax on wealth, applied across borders so the rich cannot simply move. It is the weakest part of the book, and he half admits it. Diagnosing the disease is where he is brilliant. The cure he offers is closer to a wish. Think about 2 people. One saves nothing and works hard for 40 years. The other inherits a flat and a share portfolio and never lifts a finger. Piketty's whole point is that, on current numbers, the second one pulls ahead, and the gap between them widens every year. That is not a moral claim, it is arithmetic. So what does all of this mean for you, tonight, in Britain? Your wages track G, the slow line. Investment returns track R, the fast one. A stocks and shares ISA, or a pension holding a cheap global tracker, is simply how an ordinary person buys a seat on the owning side of that gap. None of this makes it fair. Argue for a fairer system as a citizen, and argue loudly. But while you do, own a slice of the thing that is pulling away from you. That is the quiet logic underneath the whole idea of financial independence. You change the game, and you play it at the same time. Our full written review of Capital in the 21st Century, and what R greater than G means for your own ISA and pension, is linked in the description.